We get inspired by a bunch of amazing art over here at Greyscalegorilla, and sometimes you guys get inspired by the same stuff, and then you ask us the question AskGSG, and then we figure it out. Let's do this. Hi there, everybody, this is Chris Schmidt from Greyscalegorilla, where we make tools, training, and tutorials to help make you a better motion designer. So I run a live show called AskGSG, and on a lot of Wednesdays out of the year, we go and we just tackle questions from the audience and try and figure things out. So I had seen this really inspiring piece from Lukas and Alexa, and I knew that was going to end up coming up as a question, and it did, and we got to tackle what I considered to be the most difficult part of it. Now, Lukas and Alexa made this in Houdini, and we tackled it in Cinema. So while we're not trying to make it as visually beautiful or anything, we're trying to tackle the technical aspects and just work our way through it. So we thought that this would be a fun video to share of just going through and trying to figure out how to do something that we haven't specifically seen done in Cinema. All the steps going through, how that I kind of meticulously go and try and figure out this, tweak the settings, see how this is working, and then try and make a rig that can replicate the most difficult shot here. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. Ooh, MW is saying that they have a nice fresh one, 37 seconds in. So either it's for real a fresh one, or it could be a joke fresh one. Oh no, it's the Velcro. I was shocked that this didn't come up last week because Chad put this in the our local Slack, and I was like, I got to start thinking about this because I know somebody's going to be asking about it. This was made, well, let's see. This was made by Alexa Sirbu, Lukas Vojir, and Zelig Sound. And it's a spot made for Velcro, and it's another kind of man versus machine type style, but super crazy cool. If you haven't seen it, you should super check out the whole thing. But it has some incredibly advanced like string work. And I bet I know exactly what 37 seconds in is going to look like, and it's going to be when it was like that hook and a string, but there'll be a bunch of them. So let's just let this play through a little bit more, and I bet you anything it's going to be that. So right around now, and there it is. That's what I thought it'd be. Oh, man. So, yeah, like I said, I was shocked that this didn't come up last week. So, man, what do we do here? I don't even know. I've been thinking about it a little bit, and some of it just goes to, like, we got to logically think about some of the details. If we can even do this in Cinema, maybe we can't. I feel like we can do some... it would be relatively easy to do it on a small scale, like just do maybe one hook and one string. But the problem for me is thinking of it, how do you go and make a whole bunch of those? And maybe we could just do the one rig and then copy it a bunch of times. So maybe let's just jump in and try and make one of them. Now, the tricky bit starts almost right off the bat, and that is because Cinema 4D has a couple of different like dynamic hair type systems that we can use. So the built-in hair simulation one works great, but hairs can't interact with each other. They just interact with straight up geometry, and they definitely don't interact with two different strings. So the one thing that does interact, the one way you can do interactive string is to do it with softbody. But the problem with softbody is it's kind of a pain in the butt to attach a softbody to something else. So why don't we start out as clean and as basic as we can and see what we end up with. So let's see. Let's just start out by trying to make a single hook here. So we're just going to make that, and then we're going to double the height like that. We're going to make this editable, and let's go and select that point, grow our selection, invert our selection, delete that, and now we've got, actually, even that's not true. We should probably keep that as well. Let's grab that and that, grow our selection, deselect that. Nope, sorry. Windows still getting used to the keyboard. I've been swapping between Mac and PC, and it can definitely trip me up. Now, something I maybe shouldn't have done is there's actually 2 points on top of each other right here, and that's tripping us up right now. So let me think of what is the best way to actually make that spline and have that be a single point. Because if I were to grab this and delete it, then you see we actually did have 2 points there, so maybe I could say soft interpolation. That actually does a pretty good job. So yeah, just doing that is fine. And then we can delete that point, and then there'll be an extra one there. And now we've got a single hook. Cool. So that seems like the basic beginning of this. Once again, we want to keep everything clean, so why don't we be precise with this? We'll move that over 200. We'll move this up 200. So now at that first point, it's right at 0, 0, 0, and we've got a little first hook. So given that, let's see, my stream is spinning, so hopefully it's still working for you guys, but I can't see the chat. I'll check in a second. Okay, so that is the first part. Now, the next part that to me is the part that seems really extra tricky is, let's go back and look at our reference. Oh, excellent. So we get the string, and these are really stretchy, which is where I think we can maybe pull this off, but these are really stretchy down. And you get these nice big loops, but I'm wondering if, let's see if we can do it like a simple one. Like if we could do something like just make a circle spline, and even that is a fine scale. We can scale that. Let's rotate it, and let's move this over exactly 200 units, and let's move it up until, let's go to about 600 units, which is very precisely right there in the middle. Just everything's very nice and precise right now. Actually, I did a circle, but I'd probably actually, I don't know. Also, let me check the chat to make sure I haven't dropped. Am I still streaming okay? Because my the Mac is showing that I don't seem to be there anymore. So somebody let me know. So normally I would use an end side to try and control this, but that'll create more points. And the reason I kind of want a circle is because it is just 4 points on the corners. So we're going to start out that way. And let's just begin like this. So I don't want to lose anything, so why don't we immediately save this into our episode 22 folder. And let's just call this VELCRO 1. And I guess I'll make that editable. And let's start out just by working with some splines here. And so if we, oh yeah, this is going to be super tricky because, man, okay, well, we just got to do what we do. Let's go ahead and throw a soft body on both of these. So simulation, soft body, and these should immediately be soft body, but immediately they're going to fall. So we could do something like create a plane, and we're going to hit T for scale and scale that plane up. Actually, everything's a little big, so we'll probably end up shrinking everything down quite a bit. But let's go ahead and make that a rigid body. Actually, we're going to make a collider body. If I hit play, then this stuff should all just fall on the ground. But you'll see that the sphere, the circle rather, and that are not going to intersect with each other. Now, one thing we do right away is give them both a significant amount of thickness. So I'm going to, I think it's the margin, and I say this literally every time, but sometimes it's size increment and sometimes it's the margin. So we're going to try and do a gigantic size increment and see if anything happens. And nothing did, so it is indeed margin. So we are pretty big here, so I'm going to start out by jumping up to like 50. So if I play on 50, it's going to explode right away. I'm going to check the chat and make sure that I am still indeed streaming. Okay, cool. And okay, so 50 is too big. Let's try 20. And it's still, you see how it explodes outward, so that's still too big. Let's do 10. Okay, a little hop there, but that actually means it's actually working pretty well. Now, I'm actually kind of curious, is it this maximum length that's doing that for us? So if I were to change this to subdivided, crank our angle up to 90, and then say a maximum length of 20, then it should be subdividing that less, and then I would think that we could increase our margin up to 20. So that worked fine there. Let's try increasing that up to 20. It still popped, but it might be that 10 thing. In order to accurately see this, why don't we go ahead and temporarily sweep this? So we're going to grab our rectangle and this end side. We're going to drop them both in, and we're going to set the radius to 10, which is, okay, incredibly small. So with that being at 10, our margin of 20 is really, really, really small. So I play and you see it's exploding, and that's with a margin of 20. So presumably that's this, but we actually want something way fatter than that. You know, we actually want that to be up to like 50. Actually, if we're going more off the reference, I feel like that's closer to like 100. So that's a big old fat pipe. And let's set the maximum length to like 200. Let's see if that does anything. Now, this one to 200 actually. Yeah, okay, so that seems a little bit more accurate. You can see that those are these big segments. So let's see if we hit play. Oh, okay, that actually did seem to work. So you can see that those subdivisions, because we swept it, we can see how it was subdividing. You see it's not exploding. It's just colliding with the ground. Keep in mind that this sweep isn't in any way colliding. It's only the spline. This was just to help us visually see it. So having done that, we need to see if we can attach this rectangle, this dynamic spline, to the ground. We don't want this to move. So there's the point. And let's do that. The only way to attach a soft body to anything else is with a simulation dynamic spring. So you got a spring. The spring's already at 0, 0, 0. So I want to link this spring from the rectangle to the plane. The center of mass on the plane is fine for right now. Not the center of mass for the rectangle. I want it to be a point, a polygon point, and we can go to our index and click through. And the nifty trick is, you see the point is actually, the point 0 is the end point, but if we say -1, it automatically spins around. So it's actually connecting that point to the midpoint of the overall polygon, which is exactly what we want. But now there's a couple little things we need to do. We want this to stay standing pretty much straight up. And first of all, it's going to explode. It went flying away. I'm going to set the rest length to what it currently is, which is 0. Let's hit play and see what we get. Still explodes outward. Fun. I'm going to hit, well, okay, there's actually, now that I think about it, there might be a little bit of a trick here, because I'm going to turn off that spring for a second. If we hit play, right now I wonder if this point also has that margin. Let's see. It's a little hard to see. This plane is turning black at certain angles, but I want to see if this plane, that's actually kind of interesting. We gave this rectangle a big old margin. Wait, it's a margin of 20. I thought we set it up to 200. Maybe I did one too many times. Oh, it's exploding away. All right, that's what I kind of expected, was it to explode away. So it's still popping, so maybe that's supposed to be a margin of 100, which is fine. Okay, so there's just a little bit of a pop there. We could potentially maybe set that to 90. Let's see if it's still, no, still a little bit of pop. Yeah, even though we set it to 200, I expect maybe the number to double because it's radius, and then maybe it's calculating off diameter or something. The fact that it's still popping a little bit is a little weird to me, but that's not necessarily a problem. In fact, if we drop this to 50, that'll probably work. Yeah, that works. But now if we were to turn on the plane, my question is can this point be within 50 units of that, or is that going to pop? And I imagine it will. Boink. Yeah, you see how it jumped off the surface? So what that is telling me is that this rectangle wants to be at least 50 units off the ground. Otherwise, it's going to pop. It's going to jump away. So there's the distance to the ground. So let's hit play. And there, you see how it almost looks like it's sliding on that plane, which means it does indeed exactly have a margin of 50. Okay, so that is perfectly fine. That's what we're aiming for. So that means when we turn our spring on, we actually want to set our rest length to this 50. So it has to be stuck along those lines. Otherwise, it's colliding with everything else. Now, having said that, maybe we could link this to a null or something that's exactly 50 up. But let's just see what we get right now. Okay, well, you see it's playing for a second, and then it suddenly explodes. Boink! So that's a problem. Let's hit Control-D, Controller-Command-D. Let's go to Dynamics and immediately go to Expert and crank ourselves up to, let's go nuts, 50 steps per frame. And now you can see it's not exploding. It's actually holding it there. Okay, good so far. Now, here's what I think is going to be one of the trickiest things. That is just kind of flopping over. So how do we keep it vertical? Well, one thing we might be able to do to keep it vertical would be to do a negative gravity. So gravity would be pulling that up, and we might end up doing that. But let's see if we can actually create a second spring. I'm going to move it above so we can visually tell it's the secondary one. I want this one to be at the exact same spot on the ground. So when we click on that spring, it is still in the same place on the plane. But on this object, I want that to be a different point. I want it actually to be this point. So it's actually pushing that up. So I'm going to set the rest length there, which is 450. I'm actually going to set that beyond it. I'm going to set it to like 600. So that's going to be trying to push it even further away. Now, that it still might fall over, but let's see what we get. Oh, look at that. It's actually working quite well. Do you see how it actually seems reluctant to fall over? It's falling over, but not that much. So that is automatically kind of cool. Now, we're forcing a stretch, but I wonder if we could actually even fake that more. First of all, I wonder if we get rid of a plane. If we get rid of that plane, can we just move this spring and it's going to be wherever the axis is? And right now, visually, it kind of is. So let's just see if we move that to 250. Is it springing from that point? And it does indeed seem to be. So along those lines, I wonder if we could move it to visually the same spot and then set the rest length to 0. And now we're just saying that that point is trying as hard as it can to stay in this position. So it's going to try and kind of force a verticalness to it. We could also potentially pull this, let's just move it up, let's say 200 units into the air. The length is still set to 0. So it's actually stretching it to try and get to that point, but this other one's stretching it to try and keep it on the ground. So let's hit play and see what that does. And you see that does indeed pull it up into the air. Okay, we got a lot of different parts in play here. So why don't we go ahead and try and stiffen this up. So in our soft body, we're going to crank up our structural to 1,000. We're going to put in a lot of dampening, 99%. Shear, essentially we want this to maintain its shape the best it can. So we want like pretty high numbers. So I'm going to do 500 with 99% dampening. Let's do another 500 with 99% dampening. But it still has the ability to wiggle around. And that top one did a weird little like freak out there. So that's a little weird, and this is a little twitchy here. So we definitely have some things to try and tinker with. So right here we got some dampening. I think we want a lot of dampening. Dampening is just how much energy is being sucked out. So we don't want this to be wiggling around. We want the energy to be really sucked out. Now this bottom one, we have a rest length of 50, but we could say a rest length of 0, and it will be trying to pull it even tighter to the ground. We also have the stiffness, and you gotta be careful with this. If you put the number too high, it can like freak out. But actually, this did a good job of pulling it down. If we set that to 50, then now it is got that length. Actually, this is interesting. I didn't think about it, but maybe we should take this bottom spring and move it 50 units up. So it's trying to get exactly to where it currently is. And it's not trying to pull it through the ground. So that should actually automatically kind of work better for us, but let's make sure that we take the bottom one and we set the rest length down to 0. And that is actually doing a much better job of holding it there. And we could keep on increasing the stiffness, but at a certain point it will just explode. I'm actually kind of surprised at 100 it did not explode on us, so that is actually doing pretty well. And yeah, everything's actually working reasonably well here. Now, something that I think will be interesting is we are going to turn off gravity. Command D, General, Gravity 0. So now if we hit play, there's no gravity, so that circle is just hanging out there. And let's see what our hook is doing. Now, interestingly, I'm actually going to turn off that circle. Let's just check out what our hook is doing. It's being a little weird. Let's grab our springs and see what's up. That's not moving, but it decides to do this flip. We did set gravity down to 0. That's a little weird. Why don't we also, man, we're hitting a lot of settings here, but that's why we're doing this so specifically. We're already draining tons of energy out via this. I'm going to make sure that in our forces, I'm going to tell it to follow position and follow rotation. I just want to see if that does anything. Because there's a weird thing, and actually it does do something. There's a weird thing with the soft bodies where it's kind of like independently moving the points, but the entire overall object will sometimes act like it's moving. So I'm actually going to crank this up to like 22, which should be just trying to make it like so it doesn't move. So, okay, cool. And we've also got dampening. That shouldn't really be moving at all. In fact, I just want to put that up to 99.99. It would probably even be better than telling it to follow position. That little unraveling is a little unnerving. I wonder what is causing that. We are going to try decreasing our margin, just out of curiosity. Let's set that down to a lower number. It's still straightening, which is weird. Let's try messing with a couple of these settings. Like we've got our structural and our shear. I would think that this would be trying to get back to its original position. We could add some stiffness. I don't want to do that yet, though. But let's go ahead and chill out like this flexion and the shear. I just want to see if that does anything. And you see that immediately it kind of breaks and it's not holding its shape. So that shear being up high, and especially the flexion, that's really maintaining that stiffness. Let's drop the structural down, make sure that that's not what's causing it. It's still raising up. Very bizarre. I mean, part of it could be this one spring trying to pull that one point up, but that would just be this one point, not the subsequent ones. So stiffness is maintaining the individual length between the points. Now we could put some stiffness here. It is, to me, the stiffness is always like a hammer. It's like a very powerful tool to drop in there that can like overwhelm things, but it is holding. So let's continue from here as if, given that as a premise, and move on. I just want to check the chat to make sure we're going. Okay, so that's all good. Now we're going to go ahead and set up the circle. So we've got a circle, and we've got a very simple connection to make here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and make a null, and we're going to move it up the exact amount, 850, and move it over the exact amount, which is 200. And we're going to make another spring. I'm going to make the spring a child of it, and we'll even say that is connecting to the null. That is connecting to the circle, and is connecting to that point, point 2. Cool. So it's already got a rest length and a not terribly strong stiffness, so let's crank the stiffness up, and that should be fine. Let's hit play, and so there's no gravity, so it's just kind of sitting there. But the idea is going to be that that's going to move up into the air. So why don't we set ourselves a couple keyframes here? So I'm going to record our Y position and hit play, and we're going to give it some time. In fact, why don't we give it a full 99 frames, and then I'm going to move this up pretty far into the air, because in that animation, it's had a heck of a stretch. So I'm going to put this up to 2,500, nice round number. And it's already easing in and easing out. I'm fine with that. So that is going to be the start of that. Let's give ourselves some more frames, though. Command D, or not Command D, let's just type in 999. Okay, so that's actually doing a good job pulling up in the air, and it went so fast it's hard to tell. But yeah, it's actually pulling that away. So okay, not a bad start. Let us sweep the rectangle, and some of the radiuses here are going to be a little bit weird, so we might fiddle with these a bit. But let's also sweep our circle. So I think that we set this down to 50. So let's try and make the radiuses 50. So that's what we're actually dealing with, I think. Let's hit play. See what that, yeah, that does look like what it's colliding with. So we hit play, and that is indeed pulling the hook up, and that is flying up into the air. So not bad. We can go to our circle, and we want this to be stretchier. So we are going to tell it to be stretchy. We can still have a decent amount of damp. Well, actually, no, let's not do that. I'm going to do a structural of 10. And let's just see what that does. All we do is lower the structure. Interesting. Okay, so that is indeed pulling, and I mean it is pulling the hook, but this is super stiff, and this other one should be not very stiff. And in fact, we haven't been doing any of those other settings with it, so it's just kind of flipping all over the place, which is fine. Let's put a little bit of gravity back in. Command D, gravity. In fact, why don't we put the default 1000 back, and let's just see what things are looking like in general. Like, actually, our hook is doing a pretty good job even with gravity, so this is going to try and hold that down a little bit more. That's fine. Now, I don't know. I kind of want to, let's give it some more stiffness. I don't like stiffness, but let's give it more stiffness so it's less likely to bend. And that was stretching a little bit more. Let's give it more stretch. And really, it's supposed to be the structural should be the only one doing that. So let's give it very little. Oh, okay. There's something up. Not bad, actually. Not bad. Let's give it structural of 2. It's pulling, it's stretching. It's getting really wide for some reason. And it wasn't quite enough to break that, but of course our structure is pretty high. But let's try dropping structure up to that. Okay, cool. Oh, not bad, not bad. I mean, there's obviously some place in between here. I'm going to give our stiffness here, let's give that a lot of dampening, so it's draining its energy out quickly. So even when it snaps back, it should be snapped back kind of slowly, so that's kind of nice. We've got our overall, just a circle up there. I think we want to drain a lot of energy out from this. And I'm just curious, is that, like, see how it's spinning and whatnot? If I put in 99% here, is that going to drain that out? And indeed it does. So yeah, let's slow down the dampening, linear and angular dampening. So it's going to play, and that's going to drag up, and then it's going to snap back up. So that's draining the energy out. It's not going to go flipping out all over the place. So that is good as well. This is actually going pretty well so far. So let's hit save, and let's see what we get. So soft body, dampening. Yeah, I want to dampen that, but I want it to stretch more. We could drop our flexion and shear down, but I really don't think that has much to do with that. I guess that stretched a little bit better. Now, we were doing this with a circle. I wonder if it would be better to do with the end side to give us some more points, because right now there's just 4, and because it's a Bezier, or maybe we could just change it from being a Bezier to being like a cubic. So now when it stretches, maybe it'll look a little better. It's still a little, I guess it's not getting any wider, but I would like it to like pinch in. And it's not kind of, I would expect this to like just droop down more. I'm kind of surprised at its ability to maintain its structure. I guess the collision, I wonder if the collision margin's doing that. No, doesn't really seem to be making much of a difference. Why is that not super stretchy? I'm just curious. Like if we do a structure of 1, I mean, if we do a structure 0, it should just melt. Okay, it is just melting. Curiously, it does widen out, which is a little weird. I'm going to try dropping our maximum length down to 200, which should give us double the number of points there. It still widens. Structure of 1 really shouldn't do much, but it's not widening. Structure of 5 again. It's doing a weird little bulgy thing in the middle there. The extra points are making it so that it doesn't need to be as stiff. So it's almost like if we did add more segments around, then it changes the stiffness on it, which is interesting. So if we were to double that again, at a certain point this should explode, I would think. But if we do 50, we have twice as many points again, and now you see it's getting floppier. So okay, cool. That's a good thing. And as we do that, we can start increasing our structure back up again. There's more points, so the stretching is more relevant. So stretching up, and enough to pull it off. So that's actually starting to look pretty good. The extra segments are in general a good thing. So I'm going to increase the number of segments on this one. And oh, actually, it was a bad thing here because it's exploding. You see it's disappearing, which to me means that our springs automatically exploded based on a different point count. So those are relevant details. So you know what? That's going back to 50 because that was working for us, and there's no reason to fix it if it ain't broke. Wait, it's still breaking. I wonder if it's actually the circle that's breaking. Nope. Still disappearing. I'm not sure what I did there to not like it. I'm going to hit undo a few times. Wait, it's, do you see how it's weird and rotated? So that's, usually that happens if you make changes not at the time of 0. I don't think I made any changes at the time of not 0. So that's a little upsetting. I'm going to forward all the way. Hit play, explodes, but now it seems to kind of be back. That's weird. I'm going to save it. It's still disappearing. So turn off circle, disappears. So let's isolate parameters. Structural, very tight. It's definitely going to be something to do with the springs, but we haven't changed those. So now there's a thing I have seen where when you're doing spring stuff, having your steps per frame too high can actually freak it out as well. So we're going to drop that to 20. Still disappeared. Let's turn off the sweep just so we can see this. It's still flipping out a little bit. Actually, there's a weird thing. The oh, that's still on 50, so I can put that back up to, what were we on, 100? Was it on 50? Maybe it was on 50. Maybe that was my bad. Or I'm sorry, maybe it was on 200. Oh, there we go. That seemed to sort of be working for a second there. If I grab the spring, it's connected back to the correct spot. Play. It's disappearing, but I think we changed our overall settings. So put back up to 50. All right, sorry. That was my mistake. I put that to 50 and didn't like that, and I thought we had been at 100, so that was my fault. So now we should be back where we were. I'm going to pause it, rewind, save it, because that seems to be working. Okay, so we got a stretchy hook pulling up on the hook, and it finally lets go, and it kind of returns down. It does spin, but that spin might be this follow position, follow rotation I was mentioning. So out of curiosity, if we put those up to 15 and let it play out again, it rotated the other way a little bit. So go figure on that one. Weird. I can't really account for what's going on there. Like nothing's jumping in my head as far as what's actually happening, so I'm not sure how to address it. Because that's weird. And this really high dampening might be stopping this from returning to its position, but yeah, why not? Let's just crank these to max and then see if it does anything. Hurt. Oh wow, look, it's not letting it bend at all. So maybe maybe follow position also affects that. That's kind of weird. I wouldn't think it would. But yeah, dropping that back down, it kind of behaves. Now, this isn't actually something I'm super worried about, but if we wanted to be worried about it, we could try making another spring and moving this spring 400 units forward, 200 units down, and then connecting that again to this, but we want it to be on 0.0. So now it's connecting to that. But what I would do here is there's lots of dampening, but I would give it, well, it's already got a pretty weak stiffness. So it's already trying to return it to this position, but let's keep in mind it's going to affect the stretching. So stiffness of like 0.1. So once again, we got a little bit of a push and pull here. Now we need to make this line, because this hook is pulling it back into this position so much, we need to maybe make this a little stiffer again. So let's say 75. And then hopefully the spring, you see the string's trying to pull it back into that position. So a little weird there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that's happening, but everything else is working pretty well. So I almost just want to keep on moving from there. Boing. So yeah, that works pretty nice. Now presumably, actually, let's look at the spot. I would be curious. Do these strings look like they're getting thinner as they stretch? Because that'd be a very specific thing. And actually, they don't. They look like they're maintaining their length. And I'd almost think that there'd be the longer it gets, the thinner it would get. But these lines stretched do not look any thicker or thinner than the lines that are not stretched. So that's just not a variable that they were addressing. We could potentially drive espresso in here so that as it was stretching, that this line, not that one, this one would shrink and then go back to its scale depending on its radius. That might be a cool detail to do. It wouldn't actually affect the way it's intersecting with it, but it would work. I think it would work. Now, if we were to throw this into a subdivision surface like that, then we should get all the dynamics are calculating, but when we hit play, it's going to be the nice smoothed out version. So you can see we get that nice round hook working very well, and it even returns. So that's a good first step there. Snap. And we can do that same thing with this one. Hold down, hold down Alt as you click, and then it'll automatically make it a child, and we should be able to see that be nice and smooth, stretch it up, and snap. Okay, we've got a single hook seemingly working pretty dang well. It's pretty good. And we've already got a bunch of, we had to play with a lot of controls until it kind of worked, but these springs are working pretty well. It's got a really nice stretch to it. It has a nice snap, and then gravity is actually pulling it down. This is cooperating well enough, even with full gravity on, so this can still wobble and not be a problem. So all of that's seeming pretty good. I think that elastic actually is supposed to be significantly thinner, so why don't we make that half the size, and then here we can set our collision to half the size. And so that can be a little thinner, and it should still look like it's stretching on it. Doesn't change anything, but it still worked really well, and the thinner one looks good. So yeah, that's actually working quite well. Now, the tricky part is, if this is a rig, can we copy it? Can we clone it? Can we make more of them easily? So the first thing, are any of these connected to the ground? Yeah, that one's still connected to the ground, but it doesn't need to be. So I'm going to clear that out, and it's just connected to itself. So the grounds isn't actually doing anything, which is perfectly fine. So the first thing to test would be, can we just put all the stuff into a clone, and will it continue to work? That is an extreme long shot, but worth a test. So we got some clones. We'll just make 2. And we will push it out on X a little bit and hit play and see what happens. Yeah, that is not traveling around at all, but let's not despair, because that doesn't work in the cloner, but as soon as we make that editable and hit play, it is running. And those are both completely separate. They're each doing their own thing. So what this is telling me, and it's crazy how perfectly identical those are behaving. So we're going to have to add in some variation there to actually shake these up a bit. But that means we could build a rig and make a bunch of them, and then we might have to make them editable in the end, but it should work. So the next thought would be, if we were going to do the peeling away, and we're not going to go incredibly detailed on this, but if we were to, let's say, make a plane, let's see if we can make a plane and make it deform. And we're not going to go super crazy here because there's like 100 of them. I do not think we're going to even attempt to get close to that. But if we were to make a couple of these, and just so it's centered, I'm going to change this to linear, from linear to grid, and the grid only should have 1, X, Y, Z. So that should be 1, and let's make 5 of them, and we're going to stretch it wide across the entire surface. Cool. So I'm going to say that this null is not being animated upward, so we're actually going to save a new version of this. This null is not being animated upward. It is going to be driven by a character tag, and that character tag is going to be a constraint tag, and the constraint tag is going to be clamping itself to a target, and that will be the plane. And it's going to be locking to the surface of the plane with a distance of 0. And it's going to be, let's say it's as a Phong normal. And I'm going to lock position. So I'm going to turn off the cloner because we don't need to see that. So that should hopefully just kind of be working where that just sticks on there. There's an order of dynamics calculating, but that's just the position of a null. So hopefully that would work. So that should hopefully just be locked to the surface here. So the idea should be I should be able to grab this plane, hit play, and move it. Oh, and it did not move. So the null, though, the null is stuck there. The null did move with it. But the spring is kind of positioned oddly. Pause, rewind, undo, get that back down. Okay, so null's correct. This is way out of position, so I'm going to zero that out. So weird there. Also, the spring seems to be connecting. Maybe we added more points onto that, so it wasn't connected to the same spot. So we got to make sure we're actually connecting to that top point. Cool. So that is all good. Save, hit play again. Let's grab the plane and move it. Oh, okay, cool. Look, it worked. So that moved with the plane and even undid well. So cool. Okay, yeah, that's the plane. So that's the plane. Let's go ahead and create a bend deformer. Like I said, we're making the semi-simplified version of this. So we're going to do that. I'm going to drop this onto the plane, fit the parent. But I don't want to actually fit the parent. I want it to fit the parent except on this axis. And now what we're going to do is start out. Oops. We're going to start out with, let's bend it. So it's going to bend. That's fine. I like it going positive. So we'll just set the angle to 180. And the idea is going to be that at the time of 0, it's going to be here. So we will record the X position, and we're going to pull this backward actually so that we can start pretty quickly. And at the time of 90, oops, why did I do that? That's not right at all. At the time of 90, we want to pull this back like that. So that will be the extent of what we're trying to create. Should ease in and ease out, but once again, that is fine with me. Hit play. That is getting... Oop, why did that jump back to the origin? See how that's zipping back to 0, 0, 0? We don't want that. We want it to be... Maybe it's because it was locked position, so I'm going to hit play. No, it's still shooting back. Mode, fix the position. Lock position, please. Surface, Y, normal, 0. Zoom! I don't know why it's doing that. So, not what I don't know. I was hoping that would automatically work really well. In fact, it's almost necessary to make that work. We need this to behave properly. Oh, look, our null is back there for some reason. Our null moved back, so that's why it's flipping out. So I'm going to, and it's locked, so I'm going to unlock the position. We're going to move this forward and put it where it belongs, which is a little easier said than done. We could just eyeball it to a certain extent because we're not being that precise, because it's going to do a snap right at the beginning. So I am going to just eyeball it. But now that that is in its proper position, we should be able to, again, lock its position. And let's see if that works now. Saving it. Play. Oh, look at that. This is actually starting to work pretty well. I did not think we would get this far. I'm going to hide the plane, the bend deformer, because it's just getting in our way. Let that stretch up so the actual geometry is what is pulling it. So now the hope is if we do our rig like this, that when we make this editable, these will automatically lock their position onto the nearest place where they begin, and that is where they accurately are. So let's see if we make that editable, if we do get each one individually doing... Nope, they're all pointing to the center point. Dang it. Undo. Let's think for a moment. That's a locked position. I mean, I guess it's not what I want to do, but we could... I'm going to make a duplicate of this. I'm going to turn it off, and we're going to make it on the cloner, so it's not actually doing anything. So now the idea would be that while we're working on this, our clamp, the lock position, is off. So then we would make this editable, and then we can expand the hierarchy. Oh, it didn't actually copy that down, which is what I was hoping it would do. So I'm instead going to put this cloner into a null. I'm going to move that tag up to the null. So remember, that's not doing anything. But now if we make this, I'm going to save it. If we make this editable, I should be able to expand the hierarchy. You see all those. I can grab this one, right-click, and say Select Identical Child Tags, which is why I put that there. And then we can say, and now, lock your position. So hopefully that's locked to this new position. Excellent, excellent. Look at that. Boom, they all get stretched up. So that is a good process. That's a very minor amount of work in order to change the rig. So we just hit undo, get this back to where we are. And now it's a little boring maybe having this bend coming in straight. So if we just tilt this a little bit, I think we can get an effect where it twists up from the side. So they should all be a little bit different. So that does mean we need to pull it a little bit more forward in the beginning. So let's pull it until it's not affecting it at all. Re-record. Hit play, and it's going to move in, and they're going to pull up. Cool. So let's see if we can make more of them. So we got our grid. Let's go ahead and add on some more rows. It's running really quick. Keep in mind I am on my new nice and powerful PC machine, which is probably enabling us to make this run quicker than we might be otherwise. So I'm going to scoot this back. I'm still on axis mode, a little dangerous to make and move things like that, but everything should be fine up to this point. So now I've made a whole bunch of them, and it was very easy to make a bunch of those. So now, once again, save it, make that editable. We've got a whole bunch of them. Let's go and select identical child tags, unlock, lock, And actually, even when I do that, the bottom ones were already all unlocked. It was just this top one I forgot to turn off, so that shouldn't do anything. But let's see, hit play. Okay, you definitely... Oh, nope, they're all flying in the middle, so that means maybe they were not unlocked. Undo, get our cloner back. Go back to here, go to the... It's not locked, interestingly. Let's make sure that that one's also off. And maybe when I move the axis, I accidentally moved the main one. Yeah, I did. That's the problem. I think when I moved everything with an axis tool, it messed this up. So that was my fault. So I do need to turn the axis tool back on again and move this back to looking like it's directly in the correct spot. It's also rotated for some reason. It should just be 0. Okay, cool. I just eyeballed it going back, turned off my axis. It's in the correct spot. Let's make sure that it's working. So I'm going to just hit save, lock the position, and the singular one should peel up with it. It's not. It's not. Maybe because of the poor spring? Oh, the poor spring. The poor spring got flung out into space as well. So let's reset the PSR on that. And that's still locked. Hit play. What did I mess up this time? Sometimes subdivision surfaces don't like soft body, but I wouldn't think that'd be being a problem here. The spring is saying no good. You see how it's a red spring? I think that means it broke. But gravity itself should mean that's falling down. I'm going to turn off that spring for a second. Those almost don't seem to be reacting dynamically at all. I'm going to turn off everything there. Rewind, hit play. Oh dear. Something we did, something we undid, or something broke our dynamics. It is not, our dynamics are no longer responding. I'm going to pull that out of the cloner. Doubt that'll do something. Oh, no, it did do something. So I pulled out of the cloner and suddenly it's working again. Let's turn our springs back on and our subdivisions and see if it is working singularly. And it is. Okay. Save it. So that's all working. Let's put it into the cloner and rewind, hit play. And it's working. So there's a weird cinema refresh thing there where it didn't like something about the cloner. We're all good now. Everything's lined up. Turn our cloner. Let's see, is that turned off? Okay, that is off. Make sure that this is turned off. Save it. Turn on our cloner. Get a whole bunch of them. Make our cloner editable. Select the one tag. Right click. Select identical child tags. Lock them into position. And let's hit play. Going nice and slow. Not surprising. It's pulling up the first one. Pulling up the second one. Oh my goodness, look at that. And they're each independent, so you can see them each doing their own thing, perfectly stretching it up. And we now have a rig in which we can drive this with dynamics and have these different pieces of Velcro all stretch up and snap into the ceiling. That's awesome. I did not think we'd get this working. And it's working awesome. So, of course, always remember to save beforehand when you have your rig, because if you want to make any changes, we have to undo. If you start making changes and you forget to undo, then all your changes were lost, because we need this raw version of it. Okay, so that is working great. Let's go look at the reference again and see what we might be missing. Okay, well, those are super skinny. The caps are a little rounded. I'm not worried about the specifics there. I'm not sure how these bits of Velcro actually won't sewn into there. Presumably Velcro has some weaving method where these bits pop up, and I don't know what those are. All I can do is use this as a reference to see what theirs are actually doing. And it looks like actually we had ours go straight down, but this is more of an overall C shape, so that's kind of my mistake. I should have had that. They actually end up in this final nice little curl going forward. Mechanically, it's not affecting anything that we did. That just meant that this should have curled down instead of been straight, but whatever, that's fine. Those are working really well. I'm curious, if we were to turn off our subdivision surfaces and we turn on we make the cloner editable and we go run this, will it run pretty quick? I wonder how much that subdivision surface was slowing us down. So let's hit play, see what kind of feedback. Nah, it's still relatively slow. we're still getting decent playback, but you know, it's not like a bazillion of them. Snap, 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 snap. And now even that, I would even wonder. I mean, I don't know if the spot was made in cinema. I didn't look, but that's all working. Man, that's working well. Something that would be kind of cool is I want to throw in a random effector, and those all seems pretty uniform, but it would be kind of. I just want to see if we can rotate these a little bit. So we're just going to add in like a little bit of randomized rotation on those. So if some are pointing slightly varied directions, potentially we could like do some random scale just a little bit, but I don't know. I don't see any specific reason to do that. So once again, we can just make that editable. Play. So yeah, they're all randomly rotated just a little bit. You could probably add on a lot of random variation on the different things, like these different bits of Velcro could have different, slightly different lengths to them, maybe slightly different stiffnesses to make them go different. Obviously, if we kept peeling this up further, those would snap as well. And if we go and we look at our reference, one of the main things, and actually, I don't think we have to, but something you can do to like hide your crimes is there's only some key ones that seem to have been stuck, so then you get a whole bunch of other ones that aren't stuck. And let's see where that shot begins. Yeah, you see the shot? There's already like tons of these doing their own thing. So actually, if I play, yeah, they seem to be a little bit floppy, a little bit dynamic, but I wonder how much you could get away with just like locking some loops up on the top and cloning a whole bunch of those. You could probably fake it quite a bit. If we were to it's the last thing we'll do maybe on this. I don't even want to make them dynamic if we don't have to. Oh, you know what would be a goof is if you could do it with hair. Let's try and do it with hair. I'm going to create because these aren't really doing anything. So if we said that these are a hair object, so now we got a bunch of hairs, and I guess we could flip this to be negative. And now that that's orientation Y negative, we can say to update the guides. Oh, they're still not flipping around. I thought that would go at the bottom then. Don't these face normals? Oh, those are still... Oh, that's weird. Okay, apparently that doesn't invert the normal. And we can't... I don't think you do a negative length. No, so we have to flip that around. I don't want to make that editable. I like the more parametric rig. What's an easy way of making those flip down? I can't think of a way except for flipping this around. So I turn on the axis tool. I'm going to flip this around 180, and nothing else should change. So that should be fine. Okay, so we got some hairs. We are going to make them pretty long. And let's set it to nice around 600. And we are going to temporarily, maybe permanently, we're going to set the hairs to be as guides. So we're seeing the exact number of hairs as we see guides. Cool. And now I can go to editor and I say I want to see our hairlines. I want to see all of them. So now these are the actual hairs. And what that means is I can go into this and we can do things like turn on curl. And frizz? Okay, frizz works. Why? Oh, did I turn on clump? Maybe I meant curl. Sorry. Okay, so curl, and now you see we're getting a nice curl. Variation hair, direction hair. I want a local rotation perhaps on Z. Yep, nice, nice. And go to advanced, and here's our overall curvature. If we set that to be completely linear, and we have this be a 90-degree curl. Oh, it actually spins inward. There's a little bit of a twist to it. So if we select those both points, set those to soft, there might be a angle we can get. Yeah, something like, okay, if we curve this correctly, no variation, please. That was proving a little tricky. Okay, something like that. So now you see we're getting these very nice uniform curls, but now we can start adding in a little bit of random local direction. So those should get some variation along those lines. That's going to overshoot, but whatever. I'm going to ignore that. And then you could add some variation in the curl if you wanted to. But maybe, or I guess you could add that variation, but you have to make sure that your curl goes enough where it's going to pass up through the top. And now we got all these curls. And if they're dynamic, actually, that might already work. I should maybe already be able to hit play. And let's see. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. It's already run at beginning because this position. All right. I thought nothing would be affected by flipping that around, but I guess that changed the local coordinates of this thing. So we do need to re-record that Y position. So it's probably got to be the negative variant of it. So yeah, that's going to be negative of that. And we'll jump to its next keyframe. And we'll do the negative of that. Cool. In fact, we can make that go a little further. Why not have them all peel? All right, so that is fixed. The animation should be back. Hit play, and we're just looking at the way these bend. And now you can see we've got all of those. You see they're moving, which is what we want, but we don't want them to move that much. So we go to Dynamics, Modifier, no, Dynamics, Advanced, Custom, and we'll say that they have 3 segments maybe? Oh, and we don't want to see the guides. We just want to see that. So you see there is a little bit of motion in those. So that's kind of cool. So, those are not dead. They still move a little bit. But now we get those lines. And then I wonder if we could actually even push that further. If we go into our hairs and... I don't want to select that. I want to select this. Let's try changing our scale. So if we add, let's say, a bigger scale... but lots of variations. So now we have bigger ones and smaller ones, which should shake that up a little bit. And, who knows? Maybe even some frizziness on that. Might want to go easy on it, but add a little bit of frizz. And let's see. Now we're going to tell those hairs to not render hairs, but generate, I guess we can say circle. And we need the hair itself to be the thickness. And they're going to be quite thick. So we go thickness, and let's say, I don't remember what these were, so let's say 20, 20 by 20. So now those get thickness. Like I said, we're ignoring the ones that pop out the top. Like I'm assuming that they would be cropped out, but you can also just be more precise. This is just a way of quickly getting some filler hairs. But anyway, yeah, there's the point. We've now got all of those going. We've got a very quick parametric kind of way of those being there. There's still a little bit of life to them. They still move and they still bend. And you see there's still that wiggle. And now, if we were to unhide this, we still got our main loop. Actually, those are supposed to be way thicker. At least, or maybe ours are supposed to be thinner. Let's split the difference. So I'm going to say thickness will be 10. Wait, what am I doing? The thickness will be 40. And we'll make sure that this is also 40. Oh, apparently that doubles, so I'm going to say 20. So now those are matching. If we wanted to, we could go and colorize those and colorize that. I don't think that with these smoothings are slowing us down at all, so we might as well do a real-time editor of at least one. Let's go ahead and make some orange Velcro. And we'll put that on some black bases. Cool. So hit save again. And now we've got our nice little hair rig. And we are going to, I guess, just make it editable and see how this looks. And see if our loops are hiding themselves pretty well in there. So let's say editable, select identical children, lock the position, play. Oh dear, they're all shooting out into nowhere again. So that does seem to be a little bit of a hitch that we've been running into repeatedly. Let's turn off the hair for a second, and we already know that the main problem is probably this null has jumped again to a new position. Maybe it did when I flipped that around, or maybe there's just an inherent problem with that. I just don't know. The spring moved along with it, so, and even this null is there, so because it's being such a pain, what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit Alt-G to group it, and now we're going to move this null into position. And now we could always just zero out that position if need be, and it should always snap back, because this null will never move. That parent null is kind of like, it's like a zero null, which I do all the time. So we just call that one 0. And now this one, if this one starts misbehaving, we can always just say Shift-C, PSR, and it's going to jump right back to that position. And it should work. So save, let's hit play and make sure the dynamics are working standalone. Indeed they are. Rewind. Let's make our surface orange, because why not? And turn our hair on. Make the clones. Make it editable. Select, right click, select identical, lock it to position, hit play. Oh dear, they exploded. I wonder why they exploded. Or are they still shooting into the middle for some reason? Temporarily turn off the hairs. Let's see what we can see. Oh, yeah. What? Didn't we just fix that? Undo. All right, you. All right, you. What are you up to here? Look, it jumped again. Do we have that keyframed or something? Why does that keep jumping? Yeah, that's weird. It keeps on jumping. I don't know why, but we can do Shift-C, PSR. And I'm just out of curiosity, we're going to try and record the position of that. I don't know if that's going to break future things, so let's just find out. Well, we already know one works, so we just got to make it editable and see. Editable. Select identical child tag. Lock the position. It stayed that time. I don't know if the recording helped or not. But if that's working, then let's hit turn those on. Let's see what we get. Come on. Look, see how they just almost instantly blend in with the rest of them? So just some of them are stretching. The ones that are already hooked. Snap, 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 snap. Oh, I can't believe we got this working. These do a nice job of returning to their original position. These are all, we had that peel further, so they're doing a great job of stretching. Not too bad. The overall rig is working great. The I mean, they have a lot of them, and we could, of course, essentially, if we put times 10 on everything, then we'd have something that looks a lot more like this. So you could get the white ones, same material, they have our physical geometry, get all these really nice ones cloning. I'm even curious about specifics, because there's that one earlier shot where you see one hook getting pulled, and that's cool. It has like all these little bites out of it, but you look here, they don't all have a bite out of it. Or I don't see any with a bite out of it. And not only do I see that, but these are all, I think, identical clones of each other, because you see there's like a highlight, like a double kind of slash highlight. And here you can see the highlight. And I saw it on another one. Like, I think that these might be all identical clones of each other. So they establish in an earlier shot, like, look at all the detail. Look how that's like this hard cut edge, which is probably a lot more accurate to what kind of happens on a microscope level. But here, look, they're all rounded. It's a completely different rig. So, it kind of sells you with the way they look in one shot, and the next shot, it's a simplified version. So yeah, I think we might have nailed this one, everybody. I'm excited. Let's let that play through one more time, just for fun. Let's even turn on some SSAO. And, let's get some real-time depth of field going. Let's see how that looks. We're going to link to a camera. Let's get a nice little shot here up close. And we're going to turn on... depth of field. And then let's make sure our camera... Do we have to do it in the render settings? Command B... Physical, depth of field, and then we need to grab our f-stop, I think, and set that to something tiny, 0.1 perhaps. There we go, it's finally doing it. So, and then I'm going to set our focal point to maybe that one. So let's see what we get. Yeah, go new machine. Yeah, not too shabby. And we had this bend away in the simplest way with a bend deformer, but you could have been doing a spline wrap to pull that away. There have been a lot of additional options to make that a little bit fancier. Let's make sure the hair gets moved down below it so it calculates correctly. Honestly, actually, I'm going to copy our camera, and I'm going to undo a bunch, because keep in mind, I just made a bunch of changes, and those changes don't count unless the cloner, we need the cloner to be there. But along those lines... Oh, and we didn't need to turn on the render settings, apparently. Or maybe render settings can't be undone, can they? Oh, they can be. Okay. So anyway, that's still working. I was just going to say that we could, we can, I guess hairs are still dynamic, so I'll play through. Wow, that plays really quick. But we can go to our hair generation, and we can just say we want like a bunch more of these. Right now it's set to polygon vertex, but we can say polygon area, and that should randomly make them. We can say like 1,000. And update the guides, and I see we just have a whole bunch more of them. So, and then this number of segments that they bend around here, like, is based on this number, so we can increase that and make those smoother. We could do 16 perhaps. Keep in mind, as we change that, it might change the way the twist works, or the curl. I wonder if bend would have worked better. Just tell it to bend. Well, anyway, the curl was working fine, so we'll leave that for now. But we might need to bend that a couple more to make sure that those are all up. And yeah, so and there's a decent number of dynamics. So you can see that we're getting like really nice playback in the viewport here. Like that's really fast. But as soon as we make all of our dynamics editable, then those start slowing down a bit. But I think we have completely nailed it. Let's just do one final looky-loo, because why not? It's fun. So editable, select children, lock, play. Right, what's good about, it's not a completely parametric rig, but we have so few steps to do to make it parametric that I feel like we're pretty good. And look, just a handful of these have hooked, and they are pulling up. See, originally I thought we might need to make all of those individual strands like dynamic to make them swing around a little bit, but just making those hair is such a faster way of doing that. And then those final loops all pull up there, really nice. Snap, snap, snap. These return to their final position. And we are all good. And like I said, if you wanted some variation in there, you could always like go into your cloner. Right now we're just making one, but we could make a copy of this. We could even make like 2 or 3 copies of this, and then you could do things like go into your, we probably should have called this hook. And you could make like, in one duplicate of it, you could go in here and be like, you know what? Like maybe the stiffness is a little less stiff, and maybe the stiffness is set to 4 instead of 5. So a little bit of variations in there, so they kind of snap and return, and their positions would just all be slightly different than they currently are. And even right now, we use the random effector to randomly spin them, but you could probably, because we're pivoting from their 0 point, I think, you probably do like a couple of degrees on each of these. So some are tilted a little forward, some are tilted a little bit backward. Just a little extra variation in there. There's no random seed. If we use signal, we could pipe a random seed through there, but we did this one vanilla cinema. But anyway, I think I will officially wrap this one up. I thought that this would be like a monkey hanging around our neck, where we'd be stumped on it and we'd get asked about it all the time. Instead, we nailed it. Look at that. I'm excited. I'm excited, everybody. Thanks for that question. Definitely something different. Was that working? Was that working well for everybody? Okay, cool. Seems to have worked well. I'd love to know how they made theirs, but we got it to work, so I am happy. So there we go, a clip from AskGSG. So this show, AskGSG, runs on a lot of Wednesdays out of the year where we just kind of try and tackle your questions. And this week was really fun that we were able to tackle this piece from Lukas and Alexa. Now, if you really like their work, make sure you check out the interview that Greyscalegorilla has of how they put this piece together and get a little more detail on that. And be sure to tune in to AskGSG live on Wednesdays. Make sure you go to Greyscalegorilla/AskGSG to get more information. And I think that will cover this. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in another video. Bye-bye.